Hello again, everyone. I've had a request to profile one of my smaller vintage fountain pens, and because I'm kind of new to vintage fountain pens and I don't know a whole lot about that particular pen, I figured I would not just profile that, since I don't know a lot about it, I would profile some other vintage pens that I have as well and how I'm storing them. So you may recognize this case from a prior video. It is the Monteverde Pen Case, which I believe holds 36 pens. I think that's the number. It's a little bit worse for wear. This is kind of one of the downsides about this case, is that it can get a little dirty. I've basically been propping this up on the floor next to my desk, and I think that that's probably not the best place for it. I need to find a bookshelf or some place where I can put this. But I access them so often that that's kind of convenient for me when I'm at my desk. But anyway, I have since purchased an additional one of these cases because they are so inexpensive. And this one, I have dedicated to just vintage pens. And the other one, I have newer pens. And you will notice, because this is black and my dog is white and brown, there is going to be some dog fur. So that's just the way it is around here. All right, so I am going to move actually, let me see if I can pull that over so I can show you these all at once. So the pen that I was asked to profile is this tiny little guy. So I'll tell you what I do know about it, and I do not think it's functional, first off. Because it is a lever fill, it has a tiny little lever. So again, with vintage pens, I am not an expert, but I do kind of know the basics of some pens. So this is a lever fill, and basically there is, or I'm not sure if there actually is still one in here, or if it is, it's very probably corroded. But usually there's a little rubber sack that goes, and here I'll open this. There's usually a little rubber sack that goes around this piece inside and then goes down the barrel. And then when you lever this up, and it doesn't entirely lever up because it is, because it's kind of, it feels very crunchy when I do that, so I don't want to do it. But usually when you pull that up and then push it down, when you have the tip in ink, it will suck ink up into that little sack, and then that's how it fills, as opposed to a converter. So it's not the most convenient way to fill a fountain pen, because that interior sack does degrade over time. And this one, I'm sure, is probably in tatters. But this is a Peter Pan pen. So there is a whole variety of vintage pens that are in this Peter Pan brand that are little tiny pens like this, and I think they were meant to go on a necklace or something like that, for ladies to carry around their pens like that. And this one is just is in a beautiful resin. I got it because it was super inexpensive on a secondhand site, and I wasn't necessarily concerned that it actually worked given the price. But I did just want to kind of check it out, and I had just started dabbling in vintage fountain pens. So this was something, and I actually did not realize it was this tiny when I bought it, because I had not encountered one of these before. So when I got it, I was like, oh my goodness, that's so tiny. But it actually does have a 14 karat nib, and the nib itself says Peter Pan on it. Let's see if you can see that. You should be able to see it. And from reading on sort of like little fountain pen networks on Reddit and that sort of thing, I tried to look a little bit more into the Peter Pan pens just to find a little bit more about them. And it sounds like they were produced over a really broad range of time. This one is probably from the 20s or maybe 30s, 1920s, 1930s. I can't believe at some point we're actually going to have to say that. To distinguish the 2020s. But they had a really long range of production, and their quality really varied. Supposedly the earlier models, which I believe this is, are a little bit better quality, and the nibs are a little bit better quality, but later on they became more of like a not like a serious pen anymore, and it was more sort of a God, I'm losing my words again today, but something that you wouldn't necessarily view as a quality writing instrument, but just something as sort of a novelty. Novelty is the word I'm looking for. So their quality decreased, but I do believe that this is one of the higher quality earlier models, and it does have this beautiful resin on it, which I think is just gorgeous. And this might not even be resin; it may be something else that they were producing fountain pens out of. But it looks like that to me, but I don't, again, I am not the expert. What I would like to do at some point is get this pen restored, and I have never had a vintage pen restored, and I'm going to actually show you the other ones that I have in here once I'm done talking about this one. I've never had any of these restored. Basically, the ones that work are the ones that worked when they came to me. I may have had to do a little fiddling with one or two of them, and I'll explain when I get to those. But I would like to get this restored at some point, and I've done a little Googling and found a couple of places online, but I really don't know their reputability or anything like that. So if any of you know of a good place online, because I would like to ship it given the current pandemic, I don't really want to go in person anywhere. So if you know of a reputable place that I could ship some pens to have them restored. Cost is also a factor. I mean, I don't want it to be crazy expensive, but you know, a lot of these pens I purchased inexpensively, but I do want it to be a good job. So, you know, I mean, I don't mind if it costs something, but I don't want it to be outrageous. So if any of you know of a place like that, please let me know. I'm very interested. So that's about all I can say about this particular pen, other than it's sort of a novelty mini pen. I actually did some looking around on YouTube as well, and I did find a couple of YouTubers that were testing out these pens who had actually gotten them to work, and the writing actually looked really nice. I have not even dip tested this pen just because I am a little concerned about messing with it because I don't want to mess with anything. Although I probably could dip test it, but it would be hard for me to completely clean out, given that this part seems, I'm not sure if it's glued or what, but it seems very, very securely on there, and I wouldn't be able to wash it out. So that is all to say I would like to get it restored at some point. So if you have any recommendations on that front, let me know. So, and it also shows that this case will hold teeny tiny pens like that, and then larger pens, you know, like the rest of these. I do have one other smaller pen, and it's pretty much the same size, maybe even a little smaller lengthwise, from the Peter Pan pen. So this is a Maybe Todd pen, and I didn't really know anything about that company, but apparently they made a lot of little portable pens. A lot of them are like this, but some of them are a little larger, and they were also around from about the 1920s, and that's probably around when this was made. And it's the same system. This one isn't as crunchy, but I don't want to do it as much. Supposedly this one is still functional, but I have not tried it yet. I purchased this, you know, maybe a month ago, and I haven't had a chance to mess with it yet, because if you do try to fill it and the sack is ripped or anything, you're going to get ink everywhere. Supposedly the owner of this said that it was still functional, but again, I haven't tried it. And so then this little lever fill, you can see, so it goes, when you have the tip or the nib in ink, and sometimes it's a little hard to get that up. I don't have any nails right now, so it's kind of hard. So you would do that, and then you would push it back, and you would probably do that 2 or 3 times to make sure that the sack is filled. And then this one has a nice little thing, which I think this has as well, that when you close it, it kind of snaps into place, which is kind of nice. And this also has a gold nib. And this one looks like it has a little bit of bending on the nib. It's a little bit bent. I'm not sure if someone pressed too hard on it to write or something like that. But the person who sold it to me, again on a secondhand site, said that it was still functional and that it does have a little bit of flex. And I just thought it was really beautiful. And again, it was really inexpensive. And again, and I've seen some of these that retail for like $250 restored. in this sort of condition with no scratches or anything. The nib, like it said, is a little bit damaged. I got this for less than $60. But I would like to get it restored, and again, I'm not quite sure how much that would cost. But those are the two sort of mini pens that I have. And then, and a lot of these I have, the ones that are older, I have not really tried out because I'm kind of afraid to try them. Just because I don't want to damage them any more than they are already. And this does not have a name on it, but it's basically just an engraved little pen, but it's a dip pen, or I'm sorry, not a dip pen. It is a, you know, where you just open up the compartment and you put ink in. Again, I'm losing my words. It's that darn flu shot. But I'm just really tired, and but anyway, so you just fill it. You fill it with a dropper. It's a dropper fill pen. So you fill it with a dropper, and then I have never used a dropper fill pen before, so I'm also a little intimidated by that. But supposedly, again, this is functional, and I'm not sure if I want to put any additional sealant around this part just so that it doesn't leak out. But again, I have not tried it yet, so I don't know. I think I might just try it and see if it leaks out, and if it does, I might put something there. But this is, let's see, this is also a gold nib pen. It says 14 karat, oh no, gold plated. Okay, yeah, I was surprised when I saw that because I didn't think it was gold. So I'm assuming that this is a steel nib that is gold plated. And again, super cheap. I think I got this one for less than $30. I just kind of like the look of it and thought it was interesting. And but I have not tried it out. And then this is probably the other oldest one that I have, and I have no idea what the age of this one is. These I'm pretty certain are either 20s or 30s, 1920s or 30s. And this one is also, I believe, around 1920s. So this is a wall fountain pen. Again, I purchased from a secondhand site. I could buy from some place like Peyton Street Pens. So Peyton Street Pens was actually recommended to me. I think I learned about it from Adventure Denali, who's a great YouTuber, by the way, if you haven't seen her channel. But Peyton Street Pens is actually a great source for vintage pens, even older like this, but you are going to pay a premium because they are dog fur everywhere. They are completely restored. So when you get them, you know that you don't have to restore them. This I bought in an unrestored state, and it did, I knew this when I bought it, that it did have some little divots and scrapes in here. I don't know how that happened. I'm wondering if someone was trying to get this portion off and like clamping it with something. That's my guess, because this is like super strongly on here. But again, I probably would like to get this restored. This has, let's see, what does it say on the nib? It says, it just says wall number 3. So it's a wall number 3 nib. And the nibs themselves can go for a lot. And this was also pretty cheap. It was under $50, but I can't remember the exact amount that I paid. And again, this is a lever fill, and I do not know the, and this one's a little crunchy, which makes me think that that needs to be replaced. Because usually if there is a sack in here and it degrades, it tends to get kind of crunchy and crusty in there. And it's because it's brittle at this point, and so it would probably need to be replaced. And part of the reason why I think that this was from someone gripping it with something to try and get these pieces apart is that there's also some little marks here on this portion. And, they may not be able to get those out if this is restored, but, that would be fine. Like I said, a new restored wall pen of this type could run you like $250 yet again. So, and I don't know if it's going to cost me that much to restore it, so maybe it was not a deal at all. But I just thought that these pens were interesting when I bought them, and to a certain extent, I kind of like learning about, the types of fountain pens that they used at different times and all of that. So it's more for the information of it than anything else. So these are Pelicon. This is a pencil, and this is a ballpoint pen that came with my Pelicon. Let me see if I can. Okay, it's a little bit further away. I will show you that in just a second. Luckily, it was fairly close by. And I'm not sure if I showed you this on the channel or not. I know I showed you the case that I was planning to put it in, which is this, 6-pen Galen case here. And I have put it in here. It was, the little holders were too big for the ballpoint and the pencil. And so this guy, I believe, is a Pelicon 400NN, based on the style and the look of it. And there's also a whole way of dating them. There's actually a great website out there for vintage Pelicons in particular. And I'm forgetting the name of it, but I'll try and find it and put a link down below. It's like the Flock or something like that, where there's a lot of really good information about dating your vintage Pelicons. So, and based on that, this is probably from 50s, 60s, maybe. And then this one that I have, I think is either from the 1980s or 1990s, this other vintage one that I had. And both of these I purchased off of a secondhand site. This one was pretty much brand new and has a medium nib on it, and it writes great. It's not as flexible as some of the other, sorry, clearly it's inked. It's not as flexible as the other Pelicons that I have, but the nib isn't. But it still writes wonderfully, and it was a deal, let me tell you. This was also a deal, but it was a little bit less of a deal than these others. And this is still writable, and it came in this little set, so you can see that they all match. And this I probably would like to get restored as well, because every other Pelicon I've gotten the piston mechanism, so this is a piston fill pen, and I'm not going to mess with it because it does have ink in it. The piston mechanism goes incredibly smoothly on the other pens I have, and with this one it's a little stiff and a little bit hard to get going. I was able to fill it, and it does write, and in fact, let me go ahead and write something for you. I have my Tomoe River notepad here. I'm just going to find a page that I've already written on. And this one also does not really post. So if you put it on, it'll pretty much, well, it's not doing it for me now, but it'll pretty much fall off. It doesn't post very securely, which makes it a little bit small when I write. So this is the Pelicon 400NN, and this is a fine nib, I believe. Fine gold nib. Oops. And this, I think, is Robert Oster Gold Antica ink. So as you can see, like the tines are not very well aligned. This one on the right is a little bit raised compared to the other. I need to practice on less, I don't want to necessarily say less expensive, but less precious pens to see if I could do some nib alignment myself. But this is probably another pen that I would get restored, depending on the cost. Okay. So I've been pretty lucky so far with vintage pens. I've only had a bad experience with one or two. And all the ones that are not functional, I knew were not functional when I purchased them. So, and that's basically these three, although supposedly this one in the middle is functional. I just haven't really tried it out. And the price I paid was essentially for a non-functional pen, so I wasn't really concerned. Okay, so that's these and all the way up to there. And then this one is a Shaffer, I don't know. Oh, it's a Shaffer Targa. And I'm not the biggest fan of this pen, but I won't get rid of it because this pen came from my sister-in-law's grandmother. This was all part of the purge of all of her art supplies and things like that when she moved into a smaller apartment. And this was the only fountain pen in the batch. If you don't remember or didn't see my prior video or videos where I've talked about that, basically I inherited a whole bunch of art supplies that she was otherwise just going to throw away. Basically, she had some people come in and appraise the really good stuff and pay her for the really good stuff, and then anything that was left over she essentially gave to us. And there was actually still a lot of really good stuff in there, like a lot of Caran d'Ache supplies, a lot of old charcoal, which I love using, so it was really nice to get that. A lot of old paints as well. Some have held up, some have not, but this fountain pen was in that, and I still have the box downstairs in my art studio, but I'm keeping this with the other ones. But I find it to be a little bit thin for my liking. And here, I should probably just open this back up, and give you, let's do a blank page and I'll give you another sample. So this is the, yeah, that's another thing. It doesn't really stay wet. I do have some issues with it drying out. I have a little cup of water off to the side here, and usually, it might not work in this case, but usually if I wet the nib and then kind of wipe it off on a paper towel a little bit to get some of the dried bits off, it'll usually start writing again. And I think, yeah, now it's just a little waterlogged. So this is a Shaffer Targa, and it has a stainless steel nib, and I don't know, nib, this also may be running out of ink. Stainless nib, I believe it's a fine, but I'm not certain. And I think that this is probably from the 1950s to 60s. It's not a very good representation, but this pen does dry out, and it has a pretty thin line, and I don't find it to be a super enjoyable writing experience. And I'm not quite sure what she used it for, whether she actually used it for writing or if she used it in her art, because she used everything. She was basically a mixed media artist. So, so there's that one. This I have not tried out yet either, so I'm not going to be able to test it today. So this is kind of an interesting pen. It's actually a pull-off. I just didn't, yeah, so there you go. And I actually have a few other nibs in another container where I keep fountain pen things. But this is an Osmeroid pen, and you can usually find them for pretty inexpensive, but it's all italic calligraphy nibs. There's like 3 other shapes. Some of them are a little bit wider or shorter or whatever. And then inside it has this little sack, I guess you could call it. It's kind of like a converter, but you basically just squeeze it to fill. So it's not very efficient. I got this and the 3 nibs for $10, which is cheaper than you can usually get it. But it seems to be fully functional. But again, I have not tried it out. A lot of these, it's like, there's only so much time in the day, right? Okay, I'm getting up to a pretty long video, so I'm going to go through the rest of these. I'm going to test the ones that are testable, and then we'll go from there. So this is a Sailor vintage sort of mini pen that has a, I think it's 14 karat, oh no, it's 18 karat gold nib. So this, and I don't know the model name, so this is a Sailor vintage mini pen with an 18K nib, and I think it's fine. And I think that this is probably from, and I'll show you these again at the end, I think this is probably from the 50s or 60s as well. It might be 70s. I don't know. That I got off of eBay for like $30. This actually just came in the mail today, and this is a Parker 45, but I do already have another Parker 45. Parkers, I find them to be pretty good generally. So this is a Parker, oops, Parker 45. Let's see. Let's see if I can get that going a little bit better. I'm going to dip that over here in my water. Okay, let's see. Let's see if I can do that better this time. Yes. Parker 45. And these, I find that these write very smoothly, unless, of course, you've let it sat for a while. It has been sitting for a while. And I would expect this one to have sort of the same thing. So these have this older fill here. This one actually has this little compressing fill converter, and then the other one actually has a twist converter. Let's see. And like I said, I haven't tried this one out yet. So it has an older style twist converter. And I honestly don't know what the time frame for these are. I'm thinking 70s, but I'm not quite sure. And this is a Parker 51. And this one also writes really great, assuming it's not dry. And some of these I haven't written with in a while, so let's see. So this is oh, there we go. Parker 51. This one writes a lovely, lovely line. And I don't know what the nib is made out of, actually. And I don't know if it looks like a medium nib to me, but I'm not quite sure. And again, these are all from secondhand sites, and this is another squeeze filler. I probably will, I have some converters that I purchased that should fit in there that are just like little slide converters, but I'm not quite sure. And this one, oh boy. So this one is a Parker Sonnet, which is a great pen, but the cap will not stay on. And I had a very bad experience with the seller on Mercari with this one. Basically, I got it and the cap wouldn't stay on, and I was really concerned about the ink drying out, which is why I'm actually putting that in water right now. But it had a very, when I bought it, it was represented as being completely new, functional, blah, blah, blah. Like, basically they were saying that it was mint condition. And when I got it, the cap wouldn't stay on. So I tried to talk to the seller, like, should I send this back to you? All this stuff. And then this was before I realized that Mercari has a return policy. So, but anyway, the person I purchased it from ended up getting very rude. I kept it, and it actually writes really, really well. Same. Parker Sonnet. The Sonnet with one T or two? Just one. Okay. And the nib is beautiful. It really is. And I purchased this one for $80, which is kind of on the high end of what I would normally purchase. And I kind of should have known that the deal was kind of going wrong, because I bought it for $75 first. And then she canceled my order and relisted it for like $100. And then she couldn't sell it. And then finally I agreed to buy it for $80. And that was part of the deal. She was like, this pen is worth $200 and you paid $80. And I was like, whatever. I'm just gonna give you your money, and I'll keep the pen and I'll figure out what to do with it. But now I need to figure out how to restore the cap so that it actually stays on, because otherwise it pretty much, well, it's not going to just fall off, but like with any pressure at all, and if I try to get it out of anything, it comes right off. There should be like a click mechanism that keeps it closed, and so I'm going to have to get that restored. Okay, and this one is another interesting one. This is turning into a really long video. I apologize. So this is another Parker. I do not know which model this is. Let's see if it says, oh no, I'm sorry. It's a Waterman. It's a Waterman, but I don't know what model other than it says it's made in France. So when I got it, it had a little converter that looks similar to this. And there's a name for these converters, but I can't remember. But it was completely corroded. And then I found out that these converters are really, really rare and hard to get. So I ended up finding some on eBay and purchased 2 of them so that I could swap them out. But it seems like they do corrode pretty easily. And I'm wondering if part of that is because there's corrosion down in the pen itself. But anyway, so I did get that and managed to fill it. So, make sure you find out what kind of filling mechanism. But it writes great. I love it. And really, I mean, this was like around 30 bucks too. That's kind of what I spend on these pens, with few exception, just because I don't really want to spend a lot on vintage pens if it's going to be questionable as to whether or not it works. This is another vintage Waterman that I think someone may have identified on the channel before as an executive pen or something like that. Oh, and this one actually may be running out of ink. I used it a lot a while back, but okay, there we go. Nope, we're still, it may be out of ink. See if I can get some out of it. There we go. Vintage Waterman with an 18K nib. But it writes beautifully, and this actually has a modern converter in it, which is nice, and it pops on the back and pops on the top really nicely. I think I may have replaced, I think I may have put this modern converter in here because it may have had one of those little push converters. So there's that. And then I have two Waterman Filiuses, which I assume are still actually available. I'm not sure if they're still being made. Waterman Filius. And these are beautiful, even though they're stainless steel nibs. So it's really funny. So I, on a buy-sell trade group on Facebook, I purchased this one for, I think, $70, because that's actually a pretty good deal for these. That one also may be running out of ink. And I think I put a really, yeah. Let's see. Boy, that's some messy writing there, but you can see. But they write really, really well, and I just wanted to add one to my collection, so I purchased it. And then this one I found on a secondhand site that works just as well for like 20 bucks. So, you know, it just, you just have to do a little bit of looking around. Okay, and then this is an Esterbrook. I think these are what they call dollar pens. See, it goes right. Esterbrook vintage. And this is a great pen. I love this pen. And this also has a sack, and it's a lever fill. This was sold to me as one that had recently had its sack replaced, but it was only 20 bucks. So I was like, of course I'm going to get that. Okay, and this one I'm not going to mess with because you've seen it before, the Pilot Double Broad, which is actually more like a stub. This I did... Pilot, is this the 78? I think it's a 78G or 74G, one of the two. But there's the writing, and again, I'll show this to you at the end. I'm going to end this video soon so that it's not crazy long. But I've already profiled that one, and this one is a rather new purchase as well. I have not used it yet. It's an Aurora pen, and I have not been able to identify this. I don't have any Aurora pens. It seems to work just fine. It has an old cartridge in it, but I purchased a converter for Aurora Pen, so I'll be able to use that. But I thought it was kind of like funky cool. I'm guessing it's from the 70s. But there we go. So that turned into a really long video just to talk about a Peter Pan pen. But I thought I would go ahead and show you all the different ones. And if you have any questions about any of these, because I don't really have a lot of time to spend on each individual one, just let me know below and I'll try and answer your questions. And here we go. I mean, some of these have been sitting for a while, so I did have to try and restart them. But you can kind of see they all write. I would actually say that one of my favorites is the Esterbrook, and as you saw, it wrote right away, and I have not written with that in like months. So so it's a pretty good one. But they're all pretty good. All right, well, I think that's it for today. Feel free to subscribe so you can keep track of future videos on my channel. And if you thought this video was good, give it a like. And I hope to see you next time. And in the meantime, have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye.